Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Luigi's Mansion. In the last part we wrapped up Area 1, effectively the first chapter of the game, and now we're relatively early in Area 2 here on the back chunk of the first floor of the mansion. And at the very end of the last part we got a key from a bathroom that allows us to open this door over here, so we can just get further into our journey here. Now this room in specific introduces, I'm not going to say my least favorite enemy type in the game, but one that as a child I definitely had issues dealing with. I'm not sure if these have a distinct name because I've always just kind of called them Shy Ghouls. Like Shy Guys themselves, they have masks on, but you actually cannot damage them or vacuum them until you actively suck the masks off their face with the vacuum, at which point they just approach you and try to stab you with the spear. Notably, every Shy Ghoul comes in a pair. And if you take out one piece of the pair, the other one will no longer dance around and just try to hunt you directly. I think if you also tear the mask off of one of a pair, it'll start following you, but the other one will as well, and they won't become a pair and dance again until you at the least suck the mask off of both of them. I don't know why I had such trouble dealing with them when I was a kid. I was probably just really bad about aiming and really bad with my reaction time, especially on holding the vacuum button down. But nowadays, they're not that bad to deal with. I also love the sound effects they make. I don't know why, I've always just found it cute. I guess what it could have been, especially when I was a child, is that Luigi in this game doesn't exactly walk the fastest. He kind of just goes at a slight jovial pace. And if you're up close and personal on a lot of enemies, especially if they have wide range, like certain boss fights with the Shy Ghouls, I just took a lot of dumb hits. The Shy Ghouls themselves, though, are only one half the challenge of the game, is after you take care of all, like 8 or 10 of them, the dials in the center of the room start spinning, and the boss ghost spawns. And I hate hitting the hearts of these two with the Game Boy Horror investigation because it's weirdly precise.
So, you can see me. Well, that may be, but you'll never find my weakness.
I don't think this gent can even see us.
This is the floating Whirlindas. Once the local waltz champions, they can no longer compete since their feet don't touch the floor. You can only see and thus interact with their weak point with these two after they finish their dance routine, effectively. But also you need to be facing away from them before that while on one of the rotating dials on either side of the room. It sounds like it'd be precise, but honestly, especially if you're on the rim of it, it's pretty easy just to get to it in time. This specific boss can be kind of hard to vacuum for one run, if only because the rotating dials means if you're on top of those, the direction you need to pull backwards on will be changing rather rapidly. But again, if you get into a corner, you don't have to worry about a lot. One of the bigger annoyances, though, is that money in this game does disappear after a few moments, and pearls are included in that. And in this room, if you're a little too far away from them, it's very easy for them to get rotated away from you, and thus you might miss out on a pearl in the case you're going for as much money as you can. Doing all that gets us our next key, which goes to the door directly behind us, and thus we can just move onwards in our adventure. And I won't lie, I got stupidly stuck in this game in a couple of places as a kid, either because I couldn't figure out a puzzle, or I had too much trouble with the boss fight, or I just didn't want to go back to find health and just kept trying at bosses with low health. I think out of all the times that happened across my early years playing this next room is perhaps the most embarrassing. But before we actually get into that itself, worth noting, while there's going to be some normal ghosts that show up in here, there's also a speedy spirit in this chair, and you might as well grab that now, because if you try to take out the normal ghosts first, the lights will go on before you can grab the speedy spirit. That's kind of the tricky thing about some of them, where some of the speedy spirits are hidden in rooms with ghosts that are also in objects, so you can take out the speedy spirit first, then the other ghosts, and you have plenty of time to do so. But most speedy spirits, if they're not in a room with a boss ghost, you really gotta prioritize them, otherwise you're just gonna miss them completely. Mind you, that only really matters if you're going for a high-end game rank. And even then, that really more matters, especially in the PAL release, where I believe all the ranking requirements were raised. And I forget if the 3DS version used those as a basis or not. I know there's some things from the PAL release that were added into the 3DS version, so that was new for North Americans at the very least, and probably a lot of Japanese players, but rankings, I'm not sure if that was kept forward. That'll be for future me to find out and post on screen when the time comes. Sorry I'm making more work for you, future me, but you know how we do it. So, that turns on the lights in here, but we don't have a chest. But if you look in the mirror, there's a switch in it, right here. This took me at least a month to figure out, and that's kind of sad. I don't know why I've always found the music there just weirdly whimsical. Danger. What in the world is this? A good question. Let's vacuum it up and see. Oh, it's another button. You know, it warned us of danger, but it can't be that bad, right? And plus, we have no other option, so maybe there's a key in there.
Who's there? Who dares disturb our sleep? Oh, it's Luigi! Look, guys, Luigi's finally here! We're gonna do to you what we did to your brother, only worse.
What's on his back? It's against Poltergeist 3000! Everybody scram!
Luigi, are you okay? That was them. Those are the ones who released all of the ghosts in the paintings in my gallery. Those fiends. I wondered where King Boo and his gang had gone. So they were hiding in the mansion all along. Thanks for flushing them out, Luigi. I'm tickled you found them, but perhaps it would have been better if you hadn't, well, let every single one escape. Just a thought. Ah well, water under the bridge. Anyway, you should probably come back to the lab for a sec.
Works for me.
I've been waiting for you, young Luigi. Your brother must have been taken by that gang of boos. Poor fella. Oh, now don't talk crazy. They're not gonna eat the man. But what became of him, Odd that he hasn't come back. Common theory holds that boos grow in strength when they travel in numbers. They must have somehow combined their powers, too. Their power likely overwhelmed your brother. If your aim is to save Mario, there's but one way to do it. Capture each boo and slowly weaken the group's power. But boos, as their name implies, like to hide and then jump out to scare people. You've got your work cut out finding them. Don't get all down in the mouth, my boy. That Game Boy horror I gave you has a secret function. I knew it'd come in handy one day, so I developed it secretly. I call it the Boo Radar. The Boo Radar will flash red when something round like a boo is hidden nearby. Use it to search everywhere, Luigi. All right, Sonny, don't go tuckering yourself out. Relax. And just try to get those boos one at a time. The trick is using the control stick and the C-stick together. Don't forget now.
And thus now we need to head back into the mansion. Kind of wish they would just throw you back in automatically, but I appreciate that as a potential rest point, I suppose. I truthfully don't know why I'm silent for that every time, but I'm gonna keep doing it just for consistency's sake at this point. So now if you look at the Game Boy Horror at the bottom right of the screen, there's a light on it. It's blue if you're in a room that has no boos, but if you're in one that has one, it starts blinking yellow. And the closer you get to it, it'll get faster and faster in its blinking until you're right on top and it turns red.
I'm Bamboo, if you please.
Boos largely work like standard ghosts, only they actually have a set amount from 0 to 50.
Mercy, you've already caught your first boo. I've been researching those guys. Well, these boos don't seem to like light much, that's for sure. They do their best to hide in and under furniture when they're stuck in a lit room. So then I reckon that means that turning on all the lights in the mansion is the fastest way to find all the boos. Won't you say so, youngster? Okay, now send me the boo and all the data you got.
Catching a boo also acts as a save point just to lock that in. Be careful, Luigi. You can only find boos in a room if the lights have been restored to it. So if it's a room you've cleared of the boss, ghost, or otherwise, the boo is the next thing you should largely do to lock in a save as well. So the thing is with the boos, you suck at their HP by vacuuming in their direction, but you don't lock onto them like you do the standard ghosts. You need to actively aim with the analog stick and control stick to actually drain their HP.
Aren't you just loving my brilliant inventions? Okay, now send me the boo and all the data you got.
Now, EGAD specifically mentioned that the Boo Radar locks onto round things. That's not just a slight jab at the mascot adorableness of the boos. That's actually technically a mechanic, in that there are fake outs located among the boo locations that'll just throw you off and distract you for a second. Namely, there are two. Either you'll investigate the boo location that's a fake boo and you'll get a boo-shaped beach ball that'll bounce out and just bounce around for a second, or a bomb will pop out, and if you're not getting away from it fast enough, you will take some damage. But also notably, if you take too long to find a boo in any given room, they do laugh. And when they laugh, their location in the room re-randomizes because they can be in any of the pieces of furniture in a given room. And there's times where I feel like they re-randomize themselves into the same spot, but the boo radar takes a second to catch up, so you need to like step away and then back over there. There are 50 boos to get in total, and I think even to progress on to this point in the game, you need to get at least 5. But you don't need to get all of them to finish the game. I think you need to get like 40 or so. Future me, correct me on that number if I'm wrong. It might be 45. But in my opinion, you probably should go for all of them anyway, because for one thing, they give you plentiful save points. And given how sparse the toads are throughout the mansion, it's kind of helpful to have that. But also, if you're going for a high score, the reward for getting all 50 is actively worth it. So you might as well. The annoying thing about the boos, though, is that as we, I believe, saw already, they can actually leave the room you're hunting them in. They can go through any given wall in the game and go over to the next room over. And there's times where, especially if they're in main hallways, their HP drains so slowly that they're going to get into another main room. But while the boo HPs start pretty low at like 30 to 50, by endgame you're catching some with upwards of 300 health, and with how fast they can flee from room to room, the chase gets to be really tedious very quickly. In fact, there's times where you can chase them into a room where there's another boo you still haven't found yet, so you might have 2 300 HP boos in a single room, and yeah, I'm not a fan of the endgame boo hunting.
You've already found 5 boos. You're a boo-snaring maniac. I understand you're worried about your brother, young fella, but just take her easy. You have plenty of time still. So try to keep your shirt on. Why not go to the washroom and splash some water on your face? You'll feel much better, believe you me.
Now, EGAD is talking about a very specific washroom. You might remember I investigated one at the end of the last part. That one we can now actively enter. So I'll head over there once I get the boo here in the nursery. Also, because I was browsing through the cutting room floor earlier today about this game, worth noting that the nursery actually has a different door in the code that's never used that has a heart sigil on it, indicating this is where you're probably going to use a heart key in some form, or at least get it. And technically speaking, in that exact same direction, there's another door for the room next door to here that has a star on it. In editing, I did almost speed up effectively every boo hunt, but I only end up speeding a couple of the ones near endgame that take a while. Although there is still some notable speed up in this LP, in fact we saw some last time. Namely if I'm either farming out a gold mouse, or if I'm trekking all the way across the mansion for one reason or another. Because there are a couple times you kind of have to do that, and just to speed things up in that regard. If memory serves, some of that could have been avoided due to something that was different in an earlier version, as we can see in some of the in-game files, but I'll talk more about that later. I do appreciate, though, when it comes to boo hunting, you can get a lot of them out of the way the moment you first get the ability to do so. Because with the rooms that have boos, you can start off by getting upwards of like 8 or 9. And that's a pretty good boost towards the amount you need. The most annoying type of boo traversal, though, is probably when they actively go to an area you can't reach yet, like what just happened. We don't have the key for that room yet. Now, there are worse versions of that, because there's times I swear they can flee to rooms you can't reach until the next chapter, effectively. But yeah, it's always a little annoying. Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3 ultimately changed the entire idea with this, and I'm gonna say it's probably for the better, but just due to their own eccentricities, I do think one ends up being the most graceful to replay, despite things like this. Though at some point, I do need to, like, track down the Switch version of Luigi's Mansion 2, just so I don't have to play the 3DS version. Not that I dislike the 3DS version, I just don't want to have to record a 3DS that often. The slightly dangerous thing when it comes to saving as often as you can with the boos does come down to if you save and have critical health and there's no nearby healing points, because if you reload your save, you're going to be at low health. And if you immediately rush to your next destination after that, that'll just lead to some issues. Also, yeah, at this point, most of the ghosts are actively in the main hall now. The bats and the mice aren't anything to worry about unless you just run into them outright. It's the guys that jump down behind you and scare you, or the bomb ghosts that can be annoying.
Oh, the beautiful melody will not even give me the time of day. What must I do to win her? Passion, yes! That's it. I will show her I burn for her. My unbridled passion will scorch her soul.
Good luck with that. That's a boss ghost, but we can't actually do anything about that for the moment. We want to enter this washroom we couldn't before, and hello again, Toad. I'm going to completely ignore you for a moment and get money out of this cupboard, and also check the toilet, because I know I need to do that, even though you yourself say we should do that. In doing so, we get the next key, which will open up the door towards the southeast of this floor near the stairs to the basement. So that's our next destination. I dropped a really important thing into the toilet. I didn't mean to.
Don't worry about it.
Hey, you're right. No point crying over spilt milk. I suppose I'll just flush that old worry away. Yep. I'll just let it swirl on down to the depths and let happiness refill my life. That's the way to be. Weird toilet metaphor for moving on, but sure. Also, this game's soundtrack isn't very large, but 20 some odd years later, the main rendition of the Luigi's Mansion theme present in it, especially with Luigi humming it, is probably one of the catchiest songs in a game I've ever played. I find myself humming it decently regularly, even if I haven't touched one of these games in, at times, over 2 years. Mind you, it helps that it took forever to get its sequel, which I got why at the time, because the game was a little bit controversial at release. Just because it was a near-launch GameCube game that wasn't a Mario platformer. But I was a kid at the time, and I was like, yeah, no, this is neat. I didn't need a platformer myself, but also, I've always just kind of been a little bit... I'm not going to say unattached to Mario platformers, but Mario introduced me to the concept of spin-offs at such a young age where I'm like, yeah, no, as long as, like, the themes or the visuals are right, a spin-off's a spin-off, and I'll always accept it, even if it's not exactly good on its own merits. It's why I don't really mind the Paper Mario genre shift. I just minded the genre shift was bad, if that makes sense.
What do you seek of me?
Well, how do you?
I am Madame Clairvoya, seer of dropped items. Possessions of other people awaken vibrations in my spirit. If you find someone's dropped items, you should bring them to me. I will show you the extent of my vision. What do you seek of me?
Tell me the future.
No, I feel no spiritual vibrations right now.
Now, it happened by accident there, but Madame Clairvoya will only spawn in that room if you shine your flashlight into the crystal ball in front of her. With that said, we can't do anything with her for now. She's actively very docile and passive. So, in this room, we got a bit of an interesting combat situation where we have a mirror that actively will show where the ghosts are, even if you can't see them physically in front of you. But even if you don't rely on the mirror, somehow the dust that shows up whenever a ghost spawns in will still show up behind you physically, so you can use that to figure out where they might be. Ultimately, it's just a cute little situation. Honestly, decent reflections for the era, too. In the meanwhile, while this combat room goes on, it's a relatively famous thing about this game's development, but Luigi's Mansion was almost sort of a Majora's Mask type setup. In that early on, there was actually going to be a timer down on the bottom right at the Game Boy Horror screen that would count, I think, from midnight to 6 a.m. or so. And if you didn't finish the game within a certain amount of days or nights, effectively, you would actively get a bad ending. And honestly, I kind of wish they eventually made a sequel or spin-off of this spin-off with that mechanic, because I think it could be interesting, but also, I'm just a big fan of Majora's Mask, so anything that could resemble it in its main setup honestly would probably really appeal to me. Grabbing our last ghost in this room will make a chest spawn in, which is red, and is large like the one we got the heart key from, so this is a key item. We read about these back in Norville's study. This is an element medal. What do you got to say about these, Egad?
Hey now, Luigi. What have you found there? Let's take a look at that. Oh, it's a fire element medal. Now you can use the fire element. Yes, sir. With that, you can catch fire elemental ghosts. What's a fire elemental ghost, you ask? Why, they show up wherever you see fire, my boy. They're ghosts of fire itself, if you will. If you approach a flame, they'll be surprised by your presence and leap out into the air. Then you vacuum them up right away. After that, you can expel fire with the L button. You can melt ice, light candles, do all kinds of stuff. A meter will appear at the bottom of the screen, so keep an eye on how much element you have left, okay, fella? You may have to use the fire element to defeat some ghosts. Keep that in mind, sonny. Don't say I never warned you.
So now we have effectively Luigi's sub-weapon for the game if you count the poltergust itself as his main weapon. By absorbing certain elemental ghosts that spawn from certain pieces of fire that cannot be extinguished by your vacuum, you can light candles on fire, burn certain things down, or even outright damage ghosts. The way elements work when you use them against ghosts is, when it hits them, they'll take 5 damage standing still, leaving themselves very open. With that said, the strength of the fire you expel with the fire element really depends on how hard you're pressing down the analog trigger buttons on the GameCube controller. If you want it to go really far, really fast, you click that thing all the way in, but you can also expel only a little at a time to light things up. The main reason you want to keep in mind how hard you're pressing it, though, largely comes down to the ammo meter, because the harder you're pressing the analog stick, the faster it drains. And while you're never too far from a restock, in fact, in most cases you need an element, usually there is something that spawns it in that exact room you need it, you still might not want to waste too much of it at once. With that said, coming back into Madame Clairvoyant's room and lighting all the candles makes our next key spawn in, allowing us to access the next part of Area 2. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in Part 4, I think we get pretty close to finishing off Area 2. See you guys then!